Thanks to Rocket Money for sponsoring this video. More about them later.
I was proud, I was proud to be a Bull. I was proud of what I'm doing, the work that I'm putting in.
Basically, I had other options. I look at the team, what we got now, and we're a playoff team. We can definitely make the playoffs with what we have.
From Virginia Union University, Ben Wallace.
Wallace been yelling at the refs for what he thought were missed calls. Refs had enough. They teed him up. Pistons would score 8 straight unanswered points.
NBA free agency is always the most exhilarating time of year for basketball fans because this is when the possibilities are endless. Trades are abundant, players move around to different teams that could completely change the course of their franchise.
Why the Golden State Warriors for you?
The fit was perfect. I felt like the guys complimented each other, and I feel like I compliment their games as well.
But what happens when players make the wrong choice and join the wrong team? Perhaps they were a bad fit, or they simply joined a team who did not care about winning. Or maybe they were chasing the money. A single bad free agency decision could ignite the downfall of a once promising NBA career. And that's what we're gonna talk about in this video. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and today let's take a detailed look at how 6 NBA players sabotaged their own careers with a single free agent decision. Before we continue, I want to introduce you to Rocket Money, the personal finance app. Over the past couple months, my fiance and I have been saving up to buy a new house, and we set goals for ourselves to track our expenses, while saving up and contributing towards the house funds. Rocket Money has been super helpful in guiding us along the way, but there's more. One of my favorite features of the app is that they can negotiate and lower your bills for you and cancel unwanted subscriptions with just a few clicks without worrying about dealing with customer service. Rocket Money has saved customers up to $740 a year with all its features, with over $500 million total saved in canceled subscriptions. Their Smart Savings feature allows you to automatically deposit money into a smart savings account, and you can withdraw at any time you wish. To save more and spend less to achieve that financial freedom you're looking for, go to rocketmoney.com/AndyHoops to get started for free, or you can click my link in the description below. Carlos Boozer signs with the Bulls. A 2010 hyper-efficient pick-and-roll savant, Carlos Boozer spent many years in Utah building a case to be arguably the best roll man in the entire NBA. Him and Darren Williams had a legit case to be the NBA's best or second best pick-and-roll duo, with only Nash and Stoudemire as their main competitor. Entering the 2010 offseason, with the Jazz falling short in the playoffs in several consecutive years, Boozer sought greener pastures elsewhere. For those who don't know, the 2010 offseason featured a ridiculous star-studded free agency class. Probably the most stacked free agent class in history, which included the likes of LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Dirk Nowitzki, Paul Pierce, Amari Stoudemire, Yao Ming, Chris Bosh, Joe Johnson, and of course, Carlos Boozer. To this day, there's never been this many stars and superstars all becoming free agents in the same summer. Basically, Boozer was not the first choice for many teams. The Bulls were very active during that time, trying to get LeBron and D. Wade to come to Chicago and team up with Derrick Rose. When those plans fell through, however, they opted for their backup plan, Carlos Boozer. A nice consolation prize, but that's all he was, a consolation prize. You could say they still had a successful offseason by getting him, cause most teams got nobody. There was even a bidding war between the Bulls and Nets to get him. However, while Boozer's arrival created some high expectations for this young Bulls team, he really had a hard time adapting to a completely different game plan than before. On the Jazz, Boozer thrived in their system, a system focused on pace, creating mismatches, running pick and rolls, and helping him get to his spots in the paint to score. Their entire offense revolved around the Darren and Boozer pick and roll, so every other teammate played off of them and supported them. We're well aware of Darren's struggles after leaving Utah, but Boozer also struggled. In Chicago, his arrival coincided with the rise of the young MVP, Derrick Rose. and along with it, a completely different style of play that he was not used to. No longer was he the main focal point, nor did he fit within the culture of this team. Tom Thibodeau-led teams are known for their rugged play, hard-nosed defense, and players who hustle and work hard, who put their bodies on the line every single night. Boozer was not that guy. NBA journalist Nick Friedel described him like this, quote, "Boozer always seemed to do just enough on the floor to get by. He was rarely the guy who would dive for a loose ball or take a charge. On a try-hard team, Boozer was almost always the player who didn't try as hard as the others." Boozer is the antithesis of what this team was about, and as much as the Bulls wanted to criticize him, they kept quiet because he had a fragile ego, and they were paying him a ton of money. Additionally, offensively, he also had to adjust to fit into Rose's game, who transformed the point guard position in a way we've never seen before. Rose was a score-first point guard, and ran the offense in a non-conventional way compared to the more traditional Utah Jazz. Boozer found himself receiving fewer passes in the pick and roll. He found himself being lost on offense, not knowing where he should be. He found himself struggling to get into his best spots and would resort to more and more jump shots. Boozer went from shooting nearly half of his total attempts at the basket down to just 1/3 of his shots in Chicago. It was the worst fit imaginable. Heck, imagine how good Chris Bosh would be on the Bulls. They just couldn't get him. All of Boozer's weaknesses and lack of effort was on full display, and he tanked his value so much that the Bulls couldn't even trade him. They were stuck with him for 4 years of his deal. Before his final 5th year of the contract, the Bulls activated their amnesty clause to waive him. So he spent his last year in the NBA playing for a hopeless Lakers team. After that, Boozer did not get another NBA contract ever again. Monte Ellis to the Pacers. Monte Ellis had been a fan favorite for a long time, but after getting traded away from Golden State, his career became quite forgettable. Ellis had a couple of good years in Dallas, some incredible performances in the playoffs. His time on the Mavs revitalized his career, and by the 2015 offseason, he had several teams itching to get him. One of whom, the Indiana Pacers, were going through a transition period. They were eager to quickly rebuild around Paul George after he recovered from his broken leg. They needed a secondary scorer and playmaker to take the pressure from George. That's where Ellis came in, and unfortunately, from day one, he was a horrendous fit, for multiple reasons. So the only reason Ellis had a bounce-back year in Dallas was due to the team's exceptional spacing at every position. They were the second-best three-point shooting team in the league that year, with a top 3 offense. This spacing allowed Ellis so much breathing room to operate and do what he's best at, breaking down the defense and making a split-second decision, and getting his shot at the spot that he wants.
Passes it home. Difficult shot with contact.
The Mavs spacing was so good that it allowed him to do that. On the Pacers, however, they always had a stagnant offense under Frank Vogel. The spacing was non-existent. It's like the floor shrunk to half the size. And Ellis suffered. He couldn't get to the rim as easily as before, nor could he create separation that he needed. The Pacers, even during their heyday, never had a competent offense. It's arguably the biggest failure of Frank Vogel's coaching career. The signing of Ellis was supposed to fix that a little bit, but instead, he got sucked into their struggling offense and had the worst 2 years of his career. Like Boozer in Chicago, Ellis also joined a team with a reputation for playing hard-nosed defense and wanted every player to exhibit the intangibles to help win games. Ellis was not like that. He was never good at defense, and he was never interested in doing the dirty work. That's why, in his second season with the Pacers, he got benched and fell off so much that no other team gave him another chance. Subsequently, that turned out to be his final year in the NBA. Funny enough, he got waived halfway through his contract, yet the Pacers continued to pay him until 2022. The demise of Ellis was mostly his own undoing, as it was his decision to join a team that did not suit his strengths. This stint in Indiana caused his value to plummet to basically zero. He was so bad they couldn't even trade him. hence why they had to waive him, because they wanted him off the team so badly. It's a very sad ending to a once exhilarating young shooting guard. But hopefully, his career will be remembered more fondly. Luol Deng to the Lakers. It's hard to believe an upstanding player like Luol Deng sabotaged his own career. I mean, he's always been such a hard worker, an incredibly productive player and mentor on every team he's played for. Until he signed with the Lakers. An offseason that went down in history for having some of the most ludicrous contracts in history. Luol Deng signed for 4 years, $72 million, with the intention to become a glue guy and veteran presence for a young Lakers team rebuilding in the post-Kobe era. Except, right after he got signed, the Lakers decided it was a better idea to focus on developing their youth and giving them more minutes instead of Deng. As a result, Deng found himself benched, and then fell out of the rotation. DNPs after DNPs. With the 19-year-old Brandon Ingram taking his place, there was no spot for Deng. In fact, he got DNPs for the final 22 games of the season.
Yeah, I'm not young. I've been in the league for a while, but sometimes mentally you could let your body relax. You can't think of the time. You got to really just think of the game.
In his second year, him and Coach Walton made a mutual agreement to sit him out basically the entire year. He missed 81 of the 82 games, and the word mutual is a bit generous here. Deng did not want to sit out. According to an article, Deng was trying to be as involved as he can, even, quote, pretending to slide his feet and mimicking the flow of the game, with the hopes that coach would call him up and let him play. Deng's career was trapped with no sign of getting out. I mean, he was still getting paid a hefty amount, but by getting zero playing time, there was a sense around the league that he simply could not play anymore. I seriously doubt that's the case, because the season prior, he was still very productive for the Miami Heat in the playoffs. But from an outside perspective, it certainly seemed like Deng fell off by his own undoing. In reality, it's because the Lakers moved in a new direction, and this contract, along with Timofey Mozgov's contract in the same summer, proved to be a colossal waste of money. Luke Walton even admitted it was better for Deng to stay in the locker room and watch the game from there, as opposed to sitting on the sidelines waiting to play, because he wasn't going to play. What do we make of this? Is Deng simply a cancer to his team that he can't be around them? I mean, I don't think so. He's always been a fantastic teammate. So this horrendous treatment from the coach went way too far. Nevertheless, Deng eventually agreed to a buyout with the Lakers. And after a very brief stint in Minnesota, his NBA career came to a close. It's hard to say that a player chasing the bag made a bad decision and sabotaged his own career. I mean, that was his goal, to get paid. But in terms of pure basketball, Deng went from playing 35 minutes a game in the playoffs to getting 0 minutes on a rebuilding team. Despite his desperation to get back on the court, his career was essentially over after signing with the Lakers. Andrei Kirilenko to Brooklyn. You might remember this as one of the weirdest decisions a player has ever made. In the summer of 2013, Andrei Kirilenko had several offers for $12 to $14 million per year, but instead he signed a measly 1-year, $3 million deal to play in Brooklyn. This was right after a season where he was a very productive member of the Timberwolves, kinda looking like vintage AK-47 on the Jazz. Minnesota revived his career, so he was expected to sign a major deal, which obviously did not happen. Kirilenko's decision to sign with Brooklyn raised some eyebrows, because he took a deal far less than what he was worth. It was blasphemy, and some GMs pointed fingers. They thought he got some kind of under-the-table agreement with the owner of the Nets, Mikhail Prokhorov, a Russian billionaire. Nevertheless, Kirilenko landed in Brooklyn, joining their super team on their quest to win the championship. Though it's a bit generous to call them a super team, considering how old and washed they were. They essentially traded away all of their picks and stacked their team with veterans, many former stars, to hopefully compete against the Miami Heat.
But the biggest thing I think for us as an organization now, I think we've got pieces now that we can compete and compete for a championship, and that's our goal. That we can compete and compete for a championship, and that's our goal. And that's our goal.
We know how this went. Not only did their efforts result in a complete failure that set their franchise back for many years, but Kirilenko chose the absolute worst team to join. He got benched for like half the games and played very little in the playoffs, culminating in a disappointing loss to the Miami Heat. As expected.
Here's Joe Johnson, LeBron James on him. And trying to get it out, he cannot! And Miami has won it!
Soon after, Kirilenko took a personal leave of absence and never returned back to the NBA. It was a very strange, awkward ending to one of the most illustrious defenders of his generation. To go from 32 minutes a game for the Wolves to out of the NBA just 1 year later after signing in Brooklyn? Maybe that was his exit strategy all along. Josh Smith to Detroit. In his early years, Josh Smith was one of the most exciting players to watch, a hyper-athletic forward with such a wide range of skills that would make anyone jealous. Some even called him the poor man's LeBron James. However, as his career chugged along, Smith slowly became the player we never wanted to see. A guy with all the athletic talent in the world who never knew how to use it, and instead jacked up jumpers like he was Kobe. This reached a tipping point in the summer of 2013 when Josh Smith made a decision to sign with the Detroit Pistons. Teaming up with Greg Monroe and Andre Drummond in the front court, they had, without question, the worst spacing of any team. It was a disaster right from the get-go. Most of the blame should go to the Pistons management for even thinking this could work. Josh Smith, however, had other options besides Detroit. The Hawks were looking to bring him back. The Sixers tried to talk to him, the Rockets were looking to improve in the front court. He would have fit on all those teams much better than Detroit. But Smith went for the most money and the worst fit. In his first year there, Smith became known as a basketball terrorist. Of all players who took at least 15 shots a game, he had by far the worst efficiency. Despite being known as an exceptional finisher at the basket, the issue was Smith rarely ever went to the basket. A career-low 24% of his shots were at the rim. This was the fault of Joe Dumars and the Pistons brass, who really thought putting Josh Smith at small forward was a good idea, along with having 3 bigs who could not space the floor at all. It's a no-brainer why this team did not work out. In fact, Smith looked so bad in his first year in Detroit that they couldn't even trade him anymore. That's crazy, to go from a highly sought-after free agent to the bottom of the barrel, just because he couldn't fit in. After many failed attempts to trade him away, the Pistons decided, you know what, let's just waive him. Smith didn't even last 2 years in Detroit, before tanking his value into oblivion. Ben Wallace to the Bulls. Big Ben was a crucial part of the Detroit Pistons during their heyday, a squad that exemplified team basketball at its very best. However, as the Pistons continued to reach the conference finals for 6 straight years until 2008, Wallace was actually not there for the later part of their dominance. In the summer of 2006, after a shocking loss to the Miami Heat, Ben Wallace made an even more shocking decision to sign with the Chicago Bulls. The Pistons fans responded in distraught, feeling betrayed.
From Virginia Union University, Ben Wallace.
Mixed emotions from the crowd.
It wasn't about Wallace leaving, but about him joining the Bulls of all teams, their biggest historical rival. Jeez, they don't want to see that. At the beginning, Wallace's first year in Chicago was quite good. He transformed the Bulls' defense and carried them to the #1 ranked defense in the league. Though it ended in a playoff loss to, ironically, the Pistons. Wallace had quite the successful first year in Chicago, nonetheless, but there were many issues that dropped his value. For years on the Pistons, they've tried to hide his flaws and weaknesses, especially on offense, where he's very inconsistent and flat-out bad. Ben never had much offensive tact. On the Bulls, these issues were much more apparent, because the team could not hide him. In his second year in Chicago, statistically, he was the worst offensive player in the entire league, and he was the worst free throw shooter. Eventually, he would slow down on defense as well, and it got to the point where he wasn't a positive for his team anymore. Now, perhaps it's a bit too critical for me to say Wallace sabotaged his own career by signing in Chicago, but he did sabotage his own chances at winning another title. After Ben left Detroit, the Pistons played through the 2007 playoffs with a massive hole at center. It was that same postseason where a 22-year-old LeBron shredded through their once dominant defense.
James with the step, and the game is tied at 91.
Without Ben manning the middle, they were no longer the same team they once were. Nobody was scared of them anymore. Nobody was scared of going into the paint against them, and it clearly showed as they fell apart. While Ben's career slowly fell off, his biggest sabotage was denying himself another shot at a championship by leaving the team that gave him everything. To leave in the middle of their championship window, he regrets handling it the way he did, and he wished he communicated better with the organization. Anyway, that's all folks. Let me know in the comments if you can think of any other decisions that fit the topic of this video. Let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.